Why the love you're looking for hasn't arrived yet. Carl Jung. Carl Jung observed that the people we fall hardest for are often carrying something that belongs to us, something we have circled for years without ever meeting it face to face. And he would ask you gently to consider whether the love you keep searching for out there has in fact been waiting for you in here the whole time. As Jung wrote in a 1928 essay, collected in Collected Works Volume 10, in each of us there is another whom we do not know, and he meant it plainly, that beneath the person you present to the world, there lives a second figure, an inner other, formed quietly across a lifetime. And this inner other does not stay still in the dark. It wants a face, it wants a body, it wants a name, and so it goes looking. And when it finds someone who fits the shape of it closely enough, something in you lights up so fast you call it destiny, you call it the one, you call it finally. And Jung would stop you right there and say, do you see it? That flare of recognition is not proof you have found the missing half of the universe. It is proof that an image long carried inside you has just found a screen bright enough to show itself on. And that is not a small thing, but it is not quite what you think it is either. So here is where I bring this home for myself. Before I ask anything of you, I notice when I fall too quickly and call it fate. I notice when I demand from another person a wholeness I have not yet built in myself. I stop asking love to complete a picture I have never finished drawing on my own. Say it with me. I make the unconscious conscious, and again, slower this time, I make the unconscious conscious. Before we go on, if this kind of company by the fire is good for you, consider staying close and subscribing, so that tomorrow's teaching can find you the way tonight's found you. And if something in what I just said made you go quiet for a second, type the 2 words, "face it," in the comments. Just those 2 words. Let it be a small seal on the part of you that already knows this is true. The first key is this: the love you are waiting for has not failed to arrive. It has arrived many times already, wearing other faces, and you did not recognize it because you were looking for it outside instead of inside. Jung gave this inner figure names. In a man he called it the Anima, the soul image of the feminine carried unconsciously within him. In a woman he called it the Animus, the soul image of the masculine carried unconsciously within her. And he was careful. He was not describing a fixed gender rule handed down from heaven. He was describing a compensating inner figure, the part of the psyche that balances what the conscious personality leans away from. So if you have spent years perfecting a certain kind of competence, a certain kind of composure, a certain kind of strength, there is very often a quieter figure inside you, holding everything you did not have room to develop. And this figure does not stay in the basement politely. It walks up the stairs and puts on the face of whoever you happen to meet at the right unguarded moment. Imagine an ordinary Tuesday, standing in line at a coffee shop, half asleep, thinking about nothing in particular, and someone ahead of you turns to make a small joke about the slow line, and something in you sits up so fast it startles you. You go home that night, replaying 3 sentences a stranger said to you, wondering if you imagined the whole exchange being more significant than it was. That is not a coincidence arranged by fate for your benefit. That is an old inner acquaintance finding a new face to be seen in. The same thing can happen with someone you have known for years, a co-worker you passed in the hallway 100 times without a flicker, and then one ordinary afternoon, for no visible reason, the flicker arrives. Nothing about them changed. Something in you simply became ready to project. That is why a stranger across a room can feel, in one breath, like someone you have known for years. It is not that time has folded. It is that an old inner acquaintance has just borrowed a new face to be seen in. And once you know this, the whole hunt changes shape. You stop asking, where is the love that will finally complete me? And you start asking, what have I never let myself meet in myself that keeps needing to be met in someone else? This is not a smaller question. It is a much larger one. And it is the one Jung actually spent his life answering. Not because he wanted to talk you out of love, but because he wanted you to have a love that was not secretly a rescue mission for a stranger inside your own house. I stop outsourcing my wholeness to a face across the room. The second key is this: The glow you feel at the beginning is real, and it is also, quietly, a projection. Jung wrote plainly that the anima or animus is unconsciously projected upon the person of the beloved. In Collected Works, Volume 17, paragraph 338. And notice the word he chose unconsciously, not chosen, not decided, not weighed carefully over a cup of coffee. It happens the way weather happens, without your consent, and mostly without your knowledge. Think of the first weeks with someone new, how their laugh seems to explain something about the universe, how their flaws look like charming eccentricities, instead of the ordinary friction of two lives learning each other. How you would have sworn under oath that this person understood you before you had said very much at all. That is not because the two of you shared some rare cosmic frequency. It is because your inner figure found a body it could pour itself into. And for a while, the two, the real person and the inner image, sit so close together, they feel identical. Imagine a woman, we will call her no one in particular, who meets someone at a friend's small gathering, and within 20 minutes, she is certain she has never been so easily understood in her life. She goes home that night and cannot sleep. She replays every sentence he said. She tells her sister the next morning that it felt like recognition, not attraction, recognition. And Jung would ask her gently to sit with that word a while longer, because recognition is exactly what it is. Only what she is recognizing is not fully him. It is an old inner picture she has carried since before she had language for it, finally given a face and a voice to wear for an evening. Think of it like a photograph developing in a darkroom. The image was always there on the paper, latent, waiting, and the other person is simply the chemical bath that brings it up into visibility. Or think of it like a projector in an old theater. The beam has been running quietly inside you for years, and the moment a screen appears bright and blank enough, suddenly there is a whole film playing, full color, full feeling, and you mistake the screen for the source of the light. This is the part everyone loves, the glow, the certainty, the sense of finally. And Jung never told people to distrust the glow entirely. He told them to notice how much of it belonged to the actual human being in front of them, and how much of it belonged to an old inner picture doing the talking through a borrowed mouth. Because here is the quiet law underneath all of it. The glow fades not because love has failed, but because the real person underneath the image keeps insisting on being someone slightly different from the picture, and that insistence is not a betrayal, it is the beginning of an actual relationship, rather than a beautiful private theater with someone else cast in the leading role. I let the glow show me what I am carrying, without asking the other person to carry it forever. The third key is this, and it is the one that finally explains the pattern you have probably noticed and quietly dreaded. The reason you keep falling for a version of the same person, different name, different city, sometimes different gender, but somehow the same underlying shape, the same unavailability, the same intensity, the same slow unraveling near the end. Jung wrote that the anima is the archetype of life itself, in Collected Works Volume 9, Part 1, paragraph 66, meaning this inner figure is not a light sketch, it is ancient, it is deep, it draws on patterns older than your own personal history, your mother, your father, every early face that taught you what love felt like before you had words for love at all. And this composite figure sits underneath your choices, like a template, quietly filtering who catches your eye and who does not. And here is the part that is easy to miss the first time you hear it. The template does not only choose the person, it also writes the script that the two of you will act out together, the timing of the withdrawals, the shape of the reconciliations, even the particular words that wound you most. All of it can be older than the relationship itself. Imagine a man, we will call him no one in particular, who as a boy learned that love meant waiting patiently for a parent's attention, learned to read moods before they were spoken, learned that closeness came in small ration doses that made the good moments feel enormous. Now he is 35, and he keeps falling for people who are warm and then cold, warm and then cold, and every single time he tells himself, this one is different, this one truly sees me, and every single time, without meaning to. He has walked back into the same room from childhood, wearing a different coat. Follow him through a single, ordinary week, and the pattern shows itself plainly. On Monday, a message arrives full of warmth, and he floats through the whole day on it. On Wednesday, the message is slow, and he tells himself it means nothing, while quietly rehearsing every possible offense he might have committed. On Friday, the warmth returns without explanation, and the relief he feels is so large, it frightens him a little. And if you asked him what he wanted from the relationship, he would say peace, steadiness, someone reliable. And yet, look at what his own choices keep supplying him instead. The very rhythm of withdrawal and return that once taught him. As a small boy standing in a hallway waiting to be noticed, that love was something you earned through patience, rather than something simply given. Notice too how the ending always seems to arrive by the same door. The same slow cooling, the same private bewilderment. As though the story has been performed before by other actors, on a stage he has visited many times without remembering the address. This is not bad luck arranged by the universe against him. This is the archetype doing its quiet, repetitive, deeply patient work, looking for resolution in the only way it knows how, by staging the old drama again and hoping for a new ending. And you can see the same mechanism from another angle entirely. Consider a woman who grew up watching a parent's love arrive only after some test had been passed, some performance completed, some worry proven groundless. And now, decades later, she finds herself endlessly auditioning for people who make her prove her worth before they will offer their warmth, calling it chemistry, calling it a challenge worth pursuing, when really it is the oldest room in the house, redecorated and given a new address. And if you sat her down and asked her to describe her ideal partner, she would likely describe someone gentle, someone who accepts her plainly, and yet her own history keeps quietly steering her toward the very people least able to offer that, because the template is not interested in what would make her happy. It is interested in finishing an old story, and it will keep casting new actors in the old roles until someone finally notices the play itself. Here is the mercy hidden inside all of this. Once you can see the pattern, you are no longer only choosing, you are also finally in a position to choose differently. Because a pattern that is unconscious repeats itself exactly, but a pattern that has been noticed, named, and looked at honestly starts to loosen its grip. Not instantly, not without effort, but genuinely. This is why Jung was so insistent that self-knowledge is not a luxury for the philosophically curious. It is the only real leverage you have against fate quietly repeating itself through your choices in love. I stop mistaking the familiar for the fated. The fourth key is this: disillusionment is not the death of love, it is the door into the only love that was ever going to last. And I want you to sit with that word for a moment, disillusionment, because we treat it as a wound, when Jung treated it almost as a diagnosis. The ending of an illusion. Nothing more sinister than that. An illusion ending so that something realer can finally stand in the room. Jung told a story from his own inner life, about a season of deep doubt, when he wondered whether the images and fantasies rising in him during his years of intense inner work were worth anything at all, whether they were mere invention, a private indulgence, and an inner voice, which he came to recognize as his own Anima speaking, answered him simply, "It is art, recorded in memories, dreams, reflections." And notice what he did with that answer. He did not treat it as flattery. He took it seriously as a correction from a part of himself he had been too quick to dismiss, and this small exchange holds the whole lesson for love as well. Imagine two people 3 years into something that began the way these things always begin. The letters arriving like small holidays, the sense of being fully understood before very much had even been said, and then, slowly, the ordinary erosion, the way he chews too loudly now, the way she goes quiet, in exactly the moments he needs her to speak, the small daily proof that the person across the table is not, and was never, the picture painted of them in that first blazing month. Most couples read this erosion as evidence that something has died, and they either flee towards someone new who can supply the glow again, Or they stay and grieve a love they believe has quietly ended without them noticing the funeral. But Jung would ask them to look again, because the moment the glow fades is the very moment the anima or animus finally steps back, so the actual human being can step forward. This is not the relationship ending. This is the relationship becoming possible for the first time. Everything before it, however moving, however necessary, was rehearsal. The two of you facing not each other, but two inner images borrowed for the occasion. And rehearsal, however beautiful, is not the performance. So when the disappointment comes, when the ordinary human being across from you fails at last to be the picture you painted, do not read it as a verdict on the love. Read it as the picture stepping aside, quietly, to let someone real finally walk into the room. I let the picture I painted step aside, so the real person can finally walk in. Before we go further, if this kind of quiet, honest teaching is good company for you, stay close and consider subscribing, so tomorrow's reflection has a way of finding you too. The fifth key is the deepest one, and it asks more of you than the others, so let it unfold in pieces the way it unfolded for the people who first lived it. First, consider the ordinary shape of a single day inside a projection still fully intact. Morning arrives, and you check your phone before your eyes are fully open, hoping for a message that will set the tone for the whole day. A small silence from them, and your mood dims by lunch, without you quite tracing why. An offhand comment from them, and you replay it on the drive home, building whole stories about what it meant. By evening, you are either lit up or wrung out entirely, depending on where they happen to be standing in relation to you. And notice how much of the day was spent not living your own hours, but reading someone else's weather report, checking it the way you might check a forecast before deciding whether to feel safe. And here is the quiet giveaway hidden in that ordinary day. So much power sitting in someone else's hands is not a sign of how much you love them. It is a sign of how much of yourself you have not yet located inside your own chest. Notice how the whole day was really governed not by anything they actually did, but by how closely their small, ordinary behavior matched or failed to match a picture you were carrying before you ever woke up. And notice too that on the rare day when they happen to say exactly the right thing at exactly the right hour, you do not feel steadied, you feel rescued. And rescue is a strange thing to keep needing from someone who has no idea they are being asked to perform it. Second, consider what Jung called the syzygy, the paired inner figures of Anima and Animus, that together form a kind of inner marriage, one long before any outer one. And his whole point in naming this pairing was not to make romance sound mechanical, it was to show you that the deepest work of loving another person begins with locating and befriending this inner partner first, because a person who has never met their own inner figure will keep handing the actual work of that relationship to whoever is standing closest, asking them silently to carry a weight that was never theirs to hold. Imagine a woman, we will call her no one in particular, who has spent years being the capable one, the one who plans the trip and pays the bill and remembers the birthdays, and who finds herself, again and again, drawn to men who are careless with plans and loose with time and utterly unbothered by schedules. And she calls this attraction to freedom. She calls it opposites completing each other, but underneath it her own animus, the undeveloped masculine figure inside her own psyche, has never been given permission to be careless or loose or unbothered even once. So it goes looking for someone to live that life for her, and she calls the ache she feels around these men love, when part of what she is actually feeling is her own unlived freedom, standing just out of reach, wearing someone else's face. Now imagine the mirror of this. A man, we will call him no one in particular, who has spent his whole life being told to be steady, to keep his feelings folded neatly away where no one has to manage them, and who keeps falling for women who weep easily, who feel everything loudly and without apology. And he calls it depth, he calls it soulfulness, when part of what draws him is his own unlived tenderness, watching itself finally allowed to exist somewhere, even if only in someone else's chest. In both cases, the outer person is real. Their carelessness and their tenderness are genuinely theirs, but the size of the pull, the sense that only this one particular person could ever satisfy it, that size is borrowed from an inner figure that has been waiting a long time for permission. Third, consider the practice Jung actually pointed toward, quietly, without any promise of instant transformation, called here the projection inventory. And it goes like this. Pause for a moment and pick one real person from your life, past or present. Someone who stirred something unusually intense in you. Admiration, longing, even irritation counts. And ask yourself plainly, what quality in them lit me up so fiercely? Was it their ease, their certainty, their tenderness, their wildness? Write the quality down in a single honest word, and then ask the harder question underneath it. Where has this quality been quietly absent from my own life? Where have I never given myself permission to develop it? And sit with that question longer than feels comfortable, because the mind wants to answer quickly and move on, and the honest answer usually arrives a little after the quick one. Then take it one step further. Ask yourself what would happen if you allowed even a small dose of that quality into your own days this week. Not as performance, not as imitation of them, but as something quietly practiced in your own name. The capable woman, letting one plan fall through without punishing herself for it. The steady man, letting one feeling show on his face without immediately folding it back away. This is not an exercise designed to make you stop caring about the person. It is designed to show you how much of your own undeveloped life you may have been quietly asking them to carry on your behalf, without ever once telling them the terms of the arrangement. Fourth, and here is the turn, because up to now, it has been easy to nod along and think of this as something happening to other people. The anxious ones, the repeating ones, the ones who fall too fast. But pause here honestly with me for a moment. When was the last time you felt that unmistakable flare of finally, that sense that a stranger somehow already understood you? And ask yourself, gently, without judgment, what old, undeveloped part of yourself might have been doing the recognizing that day? This is not a comfortable question, and Jung never pretended it was. He wrote that when an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside, as fate in Ion. And love is very often exactly where that fate plays out most vividly, because nowhere else do we hand so much unexamined material to another human being so quickly and with such confidence that we know exactly what we are doing. Think back honestly to the version of you that met them, tired, hopeful, maybe freshly disappointed by someone before them, and ask what that particular version of you was most hungry for in that season, because whatever you were hungry for is very often exactly what you saw shining in their face before you had any real evidence it was there. Fifth, understand what this means for the waiting you have been doing. If you have been telling yourself that love has simply not arrived yet, consider the harder and kinder possibility that love has arrived several times already, wearing several different faces, and each time some part of you either fled the moment the glow faded or clung so tightly to the glow that the actual person underneath it never had room to exist. This is not a verdict on your character. It is simply the mechanism Jung described, working exactly as it always works, quietly, patiently, and completely without malice. And the same mechanism that has cost you something can also, once seen clearly, start giving something back, because every inventory you complete honestly, every quality you trace back to its rightful owner inside yourself, is one less thing you will need a stranger to carry for you next time. And sixth, notice finally that this work is never finished in a single sitting. The inner figure does not hand over its whole hidden ledger the first time you ask. It gives you one quality this month and another next year, and this slow pace is not a failure of the method. It is simply how deep things move. So if you sit with this and feel only a small recognition tonight, a single quality traced back to its rightful owner, that is not too little. That is exactly the size of progress Jung described. I meet my own unmet self before I ask another to complete me. The sixth key is this. None of what has been said here is an argument against love. It is an argument for a love sturdy enough to survive the glow fading. Jung never promised that withdrawing your projections would guarantee a particular person or a particular outcome, and I will not promise you that either. But he did teach, consistently, across decades of work, that a person who has done even a little of this quiet locating, this modest reclaiming of what they had been unconsciously handing to others, becomes capable of a relationship built on something sturdier than recognition alone, capable of loving an actual person rather than a beautifully lit inner image wearing that person's face for a season. And here is what that actually looks like on an ordinary evening. Imagine two people years into a life together. The dishes are half done. The news is on low in the other room. Nobody is glowing. Nobody is finishing anyone's sentences with breathless wonder. One of them is tired in a way that shows on the face. The other notices, says nothing dramatic, simply moves to dry what the other washed. This is not the scene anyone imagined at the beginning. There is no swelling music here. And yet this is the very thing the beginning was quietly pointing toward all along. Because the flame that matters in the end is never the blaze that first drew you across the room. It is the small, steady one you both keep feeding on ordinary nights, when neither of you is asking to be completed. Notice too how differently the small frictions land once the picture has stepped aside. The same forgotten errand that once felt like proof you were unloved now simply looks like a tired person who forgot an errand. The same silence at dinner that once sent you spiraling for hours now looks like exactly what it is. A quiet person having a quiet evening. Nothing more sinister hiding underneath it. This is what it means to finally see someone, instead of a picture wearing their face. And it is far less dramatic than the beginning, and far more durable. Think of an old married couple you may have met somewhere along the way, sitting together in near silence at some family gathering, seemingly unremarkable, and yet if you watch closely, there is a kind of a tension passing between them that took decades to earn, a way of refilling a glass before it is asked for, a way of catching the other's eye during a long story and sharing a private laugh without a single word spoken. That is not the fire of the beginning. That fire could not have survived this long unfed. This is something that was built, patiently, meal by meal, disappointment by disappointment, ordinary evening by ordinary evening. And Jung was far too careful a thinker to promise you any particular ending. He offered instead something quieter and more durable, that the love you are searching for was never simply missing. It was waiting behind a door inside your own house that you had not yet opened. Opening that door does not guarantee any particular person walks through it, but it does mean that whoever eventually does will be met by someone capable of actually seeing them, rather than someone still waiting, hungrily, to be completed by a stranger's face. And it means that on the ordinary evenings, the ones with no glow left in them at all, there is still something worth tending. Quietly, patiently, together, I build a love sturdy enough to survive the glow leaving the room. Here is the whole picture. The love you are searching for has been arriving all along in borrowed faces. The glow you feel at the start is a real image finding a real screen. The pattern that keeps repeating is an old archetype looking for resolution. The fading is not failure, but an invitation into something truer. The inventory shows you what you have been quietly handing away, and the meeting underneath all of it was never with a stranger across the room. It was with the part of yourself you had not yet been introduced to. These 6 keys were never 6 separate lessons. They were 6 turns of one single key. The recognition that the love you await outside is asking to be met inside first. And once you begin that meeting honestly, without hurry, without demanding it finish overnight, the waiting itself starts to change shape. It stops feeling like standing at a window watching an empty road, and starts feeling like quietly getting the house ready for someone you already sense is close. Say it with me one final time. I make the unconscious conscious, and hold that gently, because the love you are looking for has not forgotten the way to you. It may simply be waiting, patiently, the way it always has, for you to open the door from the inside first.